that 15 and 16, 2015, 2016 runs they had. That was,
I know.
City was absolutely like just on fire with that whole
Did you go to
team.
any of the games?
I was at, I think 2016, the wild card game against Baltimore when Edwin hit the walk-off home run in extras. I was at that game. That was pretty crazy to be at that game.
Yeah, that's insane. I love watching Stroman pitch.
I know, man.
Stroman and Bautista. Oh my gosh, that team was so good.
I know. And then you think they had like Price. They brought in Tulo. They had
they had everyone.
Edwin, Russell Martin. Like they were just stacked. Man, the city, like Toronto's a pretty hockey city, obviously. And, but for those couple years, because the Leafs weren't doing that hot those couple of years, and the Raptors still weren't at championship level, and the Jays just took over the whole town. It was special to be part of that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I need to get there. I've wanted to go there for so long.
Yeah.
I need to go to Toronto at some point. So.
Especially because you guys are in the National League, that you guys don't have many trips to Toronto. Probably like once every 4 or 5 years, you guys make it.
Yeah, they had it last year, but I wasn't up then. So I just missed it. So that would have been sweet though.
Yeah, man. It's a great city to be in.
Yeah.
Anyways, Alex, let's start off at the beginning. Growing up in Illinois, kind of walk me through a bit about your journey to discovering baseball and kind of when you first realized that this is something that you can kind of make a career out of.
Yeah. So growing up in Illinois, I was born in Ohio, moved to Illinois when I was like 2. My dad played professional baseball in the minor leagues, played baseball in college, basically his whole life up till, basically till he had me. And so that's where, I fell in love with baseball was through him. And, I played T-ball, all the way up. And so I would say really when I went to college is when I guess when I got drafted out of high school is when I was like, okay, like this is real. And then, being at a really, top line college helped a lot. And just kind of the atmosphere, the people around me, and then, getting drafted again and then kind of making it a reality and kind of making my own path to get where I am now.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a bit about what it was like getting drafted the first time, going in the 32nd round. Was it a surprise to you that you had gotten drafted? Were you expecting to get drafted at that point?
I had talked to some teams. Actually, the Blue Jays, they offered me in the 2nd round. There's just a story behind it. And they called my mom and they didn't tell me about it. And if they would have called me, I probably would have said yes.
Yeah.
Just cause, high school kids, they want to, take whatever money they can. So that like them and there's a couple other teams that had offered, that they would say they would take me in, this slot or this round. And that was the first year that they were doing slots, which was 2012. So 2011, it would have been a little bit different in terms of if I would have gotten drafted in the 10th round and a team could have offered me like $3 million and there wouldn't be a penalty for it because that's just how it worked. And then they switched it up to where, you couldn't go a certain amount over in each slot. And so for me, like, I felt like I was going to get drafted when I had those talks. And then, when I kind of told teams, I want to go to TCU, I want to, have an education, just, a fallback plan if, this doesn't work out. And, I felt like for me, I wasn't mature enough as a person, on the field and off the field. And so that's why I wanted to take that route and, experience the college route. And, but whenever that happened, I didn't know if a team was still going to draft me or not. And, it was kind of like, when the Rangers drafted me, they came out, I threw a bullpen for them in Illinois. They still offered me and it was kind of like hey, like maybe he's changing his mind. Like, let's just, take a gamble on it and see if he still wants to, start his professional career now. And, I was still pretty dead set on going to school and, it was a tough journey, like throughout college, just because, I had a really good freshman year, kind of a okay sophomore year, and kind of turned it back on my junior year. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, you said you made that decision because you felt like you weren't mature on and off the field, but that's still a pretty mature decision to make. Because like you said, a lot of kids that come out of high school, the first thing they think about is the money, right? And going pros.
Oh, yeah.
And I think being able to kind of take a step back and really look at the situation and be really self-aware of who you are as a baseball player and as a person, and putting that to the side and going the college route, I think a lot of kids might struggle coming up with that kind of decision.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think a lot of it is a personal choice because, some kids might be financially not as well off as others. And so maybe for them that their family needs that money. And so I totally get that. And so, maybe kids value that college education. So, I mean, there's so many different ways to put it where, this makes sense for this certain person. So, but for me, I felt like I needed to go to college. I wanted to take that route. And, I wanted to grow up as a person. And, I've met so many people along the way, and I'm so glad I took that route.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Besides meeting people, are there other kind of experiences that came out of that whole process that, like you said, you want to grow as a person that you kind of look back on now and has helped you, even today, for example, or this past season with the Diamondbacks?
Yeah. Just kind of some of the things I learned, with the coaches that I had there, the players that I got to play with, like Brandon Finnegan, Preston Morrison, who was one of the best college pitchers, and all, like, literally, like, go look it up. The history, the stats of what he's done is just incredible. And I mean, there's so many other guys like Kevin Chrome, Riley Farrell. I mean, there's so many guys. So, but being around those type of, elite players and being around, in my mind, the best coaching staff, them helping me basically guide me through, to be successful. And then also having a mental strength coach on our side where, he's helped me so much, Brian Kane, and he's been unbelievable. He, basically breaks the game down, has all these techniques that you could use, and, visualizing stuff, taking breaths, worrying about this pitch, like all these little things that helps you realize, how important this moment is, and not like worrying about the big picture or the past or the present or the future. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, and those are probably some of the things that helped me along the way.
Mm-hmm. Growing up and playing high school ball, how aware were you of the mental side of the game? Did you kind of get a good sense back then of how much of a role it plays, or was it not until you got to TCU and then subsequently again with the majors where you really started to kind of realize how much it meant?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was in high school. I mean, there wasn't any, mental side. I feel like nowadays there are more people that reach out to high school programs. I think back then there really wasn't anything that there was no like program offered for high school players. So, it was just kind of like these raw athletes going out there and playing baseball. And when I got to college, I didn't really, I always heard people talk about the mental side, but I never really, I didn't necessarily not believe in it. I thought it was just kind of, like whatever. And so whenever we met Brian Kane and he started talking to us about it, it was just kind of incredible, just to see like the little things you could do to like help you better yourself, not only as like a baseball player, but as a person. So that was really cool. And it's helped me through life and through baseball, up to this point, just because, there are going to be hard times. And so that these different techniques have helped a lot.
Yeah. It's funny now, like you said, growing up in high school and stuff, I mean, probably was about 10, 11 years ago. There wasn't much talk about it per se, but now with a lot of the kids that I talk with and consult with, they're like, it could be as young as 9 or 10 years old, and they want a sports psychologist or a mental skills coach to work with them. And it's pretty crazy when you think about these 9 and 10-year-old kids now and how much pressure they're under, that they need a mental skills coach or a sports psychologist to work with them. Because back in the day, you would only really associate those jobs with the most elite level athletes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah. And I think there's so much more pressure on kids that are younger because, there are kids that are getting, looked at by colleges and even pro scouts that are even younger now. And I feel like they have all this pressure and they don't know what to do. And, some guys just are so burnt out. And so I think it's awesome to have this starting younger so they don't, start it in college and they're kind of behind. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really cool to start as young as possible.
Mm-hmm. In high school, how did you deal with the pressure of the scouts and colleges looking at you and everything like that?
It was weird. I embraced it. I thought it was cool, cause we had a good amount of fans, but it felt like a packed house, with all these scouts. Just because back then, baseball in Illinois just wasn't that great. There was just a couple of guys, there's me and Ryan Brookie and a kid named Brett Lillick and a couple other guys that were really guys that were looked at to be drafted in Illinois. Now it's everyone, is looked at now. It's just crazy. But I don't know. I didn't really think about it. I didn't really worry about, scouts being there or, let that dictate my performance at all. I just kind of went out there and did what I needed to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah. It's pretty obvious. Why somebody would go to TCU being such an elite level college for baseball, but tell me a bit about kind of the off the field stuff of your decision to go to TCU, specifically leaving Illinois and going to Texas, because it's not a short drive or a short plane flight by any means, right? You're leaving home, you're leaving your family to go play baseball. And I think a lot of kids struggle with leaving home to go to the other side of the country, or, if you're Canadian or, international, leaving your own country to go to the States to play baseball. So tell me a bit about what your decision process was, or maybe how you kind of managed the journey of leaving home and going out to Texas to play baseball.
Yeah. It was, at first I was like, oh yeah, I want to go play, somewhere that's, an elite program. And for me, that's what I wanted to do. And, I didn't really think of the aspect of being away from my family, because I've never been away from my family for that long, let alone that far. And so, I remember my first week, or actually my first day, whenever because my mom went down there with me, just kind of helped set up everything. And that first day, I was just homesick already. I was like, I can't do this. I didn't even go to my classes. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was sick to my stomach, and I remember I called my mom and I was like, I'm transferring. I'm leaving the school. I'm going to go to a junior college. I can't, near home. I can't do this. And I was such a mess just because I was so homebodied and I wanted to be close to home, I guess. And so for me, it was super hard. And what really helped was the older players on the team. They kind of took me under their wing. We'd go fishing, or we just kind of hang out and just, do whatever just to kind of get my mind off of being away from home. And so that was really majority of, I'd say, the first semester of my freshman year and kind of into the season too. It was just kind of hard for me. And really that sophomore year, it just kind of clicked where, it was easier to be away from home. I was still getting that itch to go back home whenever, the semester or the season was over, or anytime we got to go home, for breaks or anything like that. But I feel like people handle it differently. For me, I was homebodied and I wanted to be close to home, yet I was 15 hours away, over 1,500 miles away from home. And then, there's other people who want to get away and love it. So, I even played with someone from Canada, Jeremy Fanyon, and hearing his experience, he actually went to junior college in Texas before he came to TCU. And he said he would always talk about how he, was homesick, and, his dad passed away, 6-7 years ago, or maybe a little longer than that. And so that was kind of, he would always talk about that was hard for him just to be away from his family during that time. So I think a lot of it is just growing up, you know, I live in Dallas now, so it's just kind of crazy. Like, you know, I would have thought that I always thought that I would move back home after college or whatever. So it's just kind of crazy where I'm at now.
It is. Yeah. And like you said, having that kind of close knit group of guys when you're first getting there helps a lot. And I'm sure you've experienced it as well with, you know, whether it was a minor league or major league or college team, probably even a high school team, where having that tight clubhouse means so much, not only on the field for your performance, but your off the field life as well. And I'm sure you've been through experiences where, you know, the clubhouse just made the difference for a team of whether or not they perform to their potential or not.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, whenever my junior year was probably my favorite year, I was super close with my roommates, and they're some of my best friends still. And that was probably one of the hardest things was, you know, obviously I would see them in the off seasons when we come back and work out, but it was just really hard, you know, during the season just to kind of be away from guys that you're literally with like basically the whole day, every single day. And I remember like going out and playing in like all these random cities, you know, in pro ball. And it's just like, you kind of go back into that like homesick feeling just because you're kind of on your own. So I think, like you said, like having a really, you know, close net, like clubhouse guys that, you know, you can talk to, I think is huge, because if you have that, I think you kind of create this energy where everyone gets that, you know, the positive vibes, and kind of, you know, it translates onto the field too. So.
Yeah. That's funny because I went through something similar, not with sports, of course, but just when I moved away for university, like the first couple of days I was homesick. I moved away with 4 or 5 buddies I went to high school with, and we all had a house together. So that was pretty cool. But the first couple of days I was homesick, but then you kind of get in the routine, and then I feel like I kind of maybe like didn't really appreciate kind of the clubhouse that we had at our home, so to say. And then when I left that student house to come back home, I was homesick of that student house. So it's funny how like everything works in cycles,
crazy.
right?
It's crazy. Yeah. It's insane.
And you got drafted, was it after your junior year to the Diamondbacks?
Yeah, my junior.
So you had to forego your senior season then at TCU?
Yeah, and that was tough.
I can imagine. Tell me a bit about how you made that decision, because like you said, you went to college, you initially passed up the Rangers or MLB, whatever, to go to college to mature as a person. And then by leaving a year early, did you feel like you were ready to make that step? You were that mature person that you came to be?
Yeah, no, I felt like I was ready to go. You know, I had a really good year. And so for me, like, I felt like it was time. I didn't want to leave because, you know, we ended our season in the College World Series. We had lost. And so I wanted to go back there and win it. And they had gone back the next year and literally lost a game where basically like they should have won it. So, and I'm like, dang, I wish I was on that team, because, you know, like who knows if I was pitching that game, like if I made a difference. And if they would have gone to the championship series and, you know, they would have won it all, like I was just kind of like, you know, that would have been so cool to go back my senior year and just kind of go off on top. But, you know, I was also looking out for myself just because, you know, the money that the D-backs had offered me, it's kind of hard to pass up, especially, you know, if I were to go into my senior year, you know, the money that I would be offered, even if I had a really good senior year, or even a better senior year, the value of me goes down. And so that was kind of a hard decision, because I mean, I remember calling my mom, and I was like kind of just visibly upset, and, you know, kind of tearing up, where I told her, I was like, I don't know if I can leave like TCU. Like I want to stay just because of, you know, how much fun I've had at that school. And so for me, it was super hard, but I knew deep down that it was the right decision to move on.
Yeah. Like it is a really tough decision leaving your close buddy. I'm sure, you know, there's guys from the team that you consider some of your best friends, and the coaches and everybody, and leaving that. It's like you said, it's part of it is capitalizing on your opportunity, but it's not as easy as it sounds, because like you said, you're leaving, you're pretty much your second home, right? Which is TCU.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, I live here now, in the area, and, I work out at TCU. So it's awesome just to be back here every single off season. And I'm, obviously we can't work out there right now just with everything going on, but, yeah, it's crazy that, I was only there for 3 years, but it literally felt like, home to me, which it was so hard to leave. So, but I knew that, I knew it was time to go though.
And I'm sure there's, for me at least, for example, like when I moved away from home, it was for a year, but it felt a lot quicker than a year. It didn't feel like a year at all. I feel like I remember yesterday, the first day moving to that house. I'm sure for you, I don't know if the 3 years felt like 2 months or 3 months, or just flew by like that.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I feel like, when you're having fun, it flies by. And, when, if you're homesick or, it's just kind of boring or whatever, the days just lag on.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, when is this going to end?
Yeah. Like us right now in this lockdown quarantine thing.
I know.
Growing up, you said you embraced the pressure of the scouts and stuff. Did you still have that kind of, embracing the pressure kind of mentality when you got picked so high by the Diamondbacks? Because being a second round pick, I mean, all the eyes are on you in the clubhouse, or not the clubhouse, but, the media and the national or local media, whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really think about it. Whenever I got drafted, I was just super excited to, get going, start pitching again. But I think whenever you get drafted that high, there's just kind of this expectation of you that, oh, you should be in the big leagues next year or whatever. There's this timeline that people put on it. And so for me, I at that point, I was like, I really think that if, how I'm pitching right now, if I, keep doing that, for like a year and a half of pro ball, I was like, there's no doubt in my mind I could be in the big leagues in like a year and a half. And so I remember my first full season, I got hurt, and I think that kind of took a toll on my professional career in terms of, not being, I mean, I was still mentally strong. It was just, that kind of hurt me a lot physically. And so, I remember throwing bullpens where I was just kind of muscling through it and just kind of telling myself, like, you just got to keep pushing.
Mm-hmm.
And really last year was kind of so after the 2018 season, which was my rule 5 year, my protection year, and the Diamondbacks didn't protect me. No team took me in the Rule 5 draft, and I didn't get an invite to big league camp going into the 2019 season. And for me, like that kind of, was, I don't know how to say, I guess I was just visible. I was upset about it.
Yeah.
I wanted to be, but I guess I hadn't proved myself really. And so I told myself, I'm going to prove them, that I do belong up there. And so, I backed up a bunch of big league games in spring training and kind of, prove myself, kind of put my name back out there. And, I was a reliever at that point. And I went to AAA, started the year off as a reliever, and then went into the starting role. And I just kind of told myself, like, this is the role you're in. You're going to embrace it. Like, just go have fun with it because, you're getting an opportunity to play. And so that's what I took away from it. And I remember when I got called up, it was just like, this is like a crazy journey that the last 4 years, like, yeah. I would have never thought this is how it would have been, but I'm just glad that, I was able to, get called up and, help the team, win games and just kind of make a name for myself. And where I'm at today, I just kind of, got to keep my focus and keep going. So.
Yeah, like it's a perfect example of you can never, I mean, you can plan some things in life, you can like have a rough idea, but things in life rarely go the way you think they are. Yeah. Like you said, I'm sure growing up in Illinois, you would never imagine you would go to TCU to play ball, and then the journey you took in the minors to switching between starting and relief, and now to where you are right now. Tell me a bit about how much of or if there is really a change in your mentality as a starting pitcher or as a relief pitcher.
Yeah, for me, I did both in college. And then, I did a little relieving in pro ball. But I think the mentality is, as a reliever, is, you have this like fiery presence, that you're just kind of like, you kind of come out of the gate and you're like, I got to get this guy out right now. And you kind of have to have stuff working like immediately, just because you could be in a pressure situation. And I love that high pressure situation. And so for me, I loved being a reliever. And I think as a starter, you kind of have your set routine where, you're on like a 6-day schedule or 5-day schedule. And, when you're supposed to throw bullpens, all this stuff, and your mentality each inning, you're kind of like, I don't really like saying like coasting through, but kind of pacing yourself. And I think a perfect example is like Justin Verlander. He would be throwing like, 94, 95 in the first inning, and then ramp it up into like the 7th and 8th and be like throwing like 100. And, he's like a perfect example. Like, that's kind of, and he would be striking guys out, in the 1st through 7th inning, which was just crazy to see. And so, that was my mentality, but I also liked having that mentality of, being a closer, being, aggressive for 6-7 innings, whatever it is, as a starter.
Mm-hmm. Last year, obviously, you kind of came onto the scene pretty hot. You started 4-0 with the Diamondbacks. Tell me a bit about how you managed your emotions through that kind of mini win streak that you had for yourself there.
Yeah. It was crazy. I remember, the first game, I was just like, okay, like, I remember there's a reporter that asked me, he's like, what does this mean to you? And your outing and everything. And I was just like, I planned for this for my whole life. Like, I wasn't, going to be flustered or anything. Like, I was ready for this moment. I prepared my whole life. And so, but whenever I got the first win, kind of the first game out of the way, it was just like, okay, like, here we go. Like, this is awesome. Like, this is what you dream of. And so, I just kind of, obviously, like, you're facing the best hitters in the world. And I remember my second game was against the Dodgers, who was like the hottest team at the time. And so it was just kind of crazy. And I don't know, it was just a really cool feeling, just to kind of, each game was just like, okay, like, I know teams haven't seen me before, but just to kind of have that success really throughout the whole year. It was fun. And I just kind of, I did the same thing when I was up, all the stuff that I've been doing my whole career, in terms of, plyo balls, like certain things that I needed to do, or, needed to do to be successful. I brought them when I went up. I didn't want to change just because I was up there. So,
and then walk me through, I guess, a bit of your experience, because it's never easy getting your first loss as a starting pitcher in the majors, and starting off 4-0 and then getting your first loss after that. Tell me, I know you said you've worked on your mental game and line stuff. So how did you kind of talk yourself out of really getting too upset over the first loss and really bouncing back your next game?
Yeah. I think, in my situation, it's tough because, if, let's just say you have a bad outing and they might be like, all right, we're going to send you down. Mm-hmm. And, I think regardless, like, it's always going to be in the back of your head. And so for me, I just kind of, would force their hand. I would just keep trying to pitch well, or as best as I could, just to, so I could stay up. But I wasn't thinking about that. I just wanted to keep pitching and doing well. And, I knew what I needed to do, but I remember that I'm trying to think of that first, who was against that first loss. I'm blanking right now, but, yeah, it was, I'm trying to think of who it is. Yeah, it's kind of crazy just because like after a game like that, you just think like, here, I'm probably going to get sent down. Like the world's kind of falling apart at that point. And I think, it's good to recognize, what you're feeling, um, after the game or after your performance, just because, you can get guys handled differently. You can get pissed off or whatever. And, I'm an emotional person. And so for me, like I was upset about myself, but I knew that like after it's like, okay, like I still have to work out. I still need to do my running, my all my stuff after I'm done throwing, regardless of the outcome. And basically, recognize what I did, what I was not doing well, and not necessarily change anything up just because I had a loss, but recognize what's going on, what do I need to do better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like I like how you said how you don't want to kind of you want to accept the feelings you're having, right? You don't want to just kind of forget about them, throw to the side. And that's something that I try and really preach to a lot of the younger athletes that I consult with or coach with, is, because after a game, primarily we work with hockey athletes. So there's like the stereotype of like the car ride home, right? Of the they don't want to talk right after the game if they had a bad game. And we really try and focus on having that discussion after the game. I mean, starting at such a young age is probably a lot harder for them because they have different social pressures, I think, of like their friends harping on them and stuff. But really try to stress with athletes, younger athletes, don't throw your mistakes or your feelings to the side and forget about them. You have to accept them and learn from them, because if you don't learn from them, then how do you have a clear goal of how to get better and how to fix them?
Yeah. You can't get better, just by you want to have, tunnel vision where, you're focused on what you need to control, what you can control on, but you also need to recognize, how you're feeling. And because if you don't, then, it's just going to go downhill every single time. So.
Tell me a bit about one thing that I think is so cool about younger athletes that come into the pros, whatever league it is getting, matched up against guys that they grew up watching. And I know you guys had the one game where you guys played the Cardinals, and I think it was Adam Wainwright on the mound on the other side. And I mean, growing up, even when I grew up watching baseball, there was probably no pitcher better in the leagues at some point or another than Adam Wainwright. So tell me a bit about what it was like, going up against him, starting pitcher versus starting pitcher.
It was cool. It was sweet. I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is a guy I grew up watching, and even Yadier Molina, and he hit a home run off me. And I was like, all right, that's why he's one of the best. I mean, the guy is just incredible, but, Wainwright he's just so good. He knows what to throw guys, and his stuff is just nasty. And so that's why he's so successful, and he's confident. Like, if you just hear him talking, like interviews and stuff like that, he's just so confident. And I think that's why he's so successful. Talking to guys who have played with him, they said that he's one of the best teammates. And I remember he threw me, I'm trying to think of what he threw me. It was like a cutter or curveball. It's definitely not a curveball because that thing is gross. I think it was a cutter or fastball, and I hit it to third base, and Matt Carpenter caught it. And I was like, I think it was like a line driver, one hopper. And I was like, oh my gosh, I almost just got a hit off a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And I work out with Carpenter, and I just was like, look at him. I was like, dang it.
Yeah. Come on, man.
So I know. So no, it was so cool. And facing Yadier Molina was like, that was just like, I was like a fanboy. I'm like, all right, I need to lock it in now. So, and it's really cool. Facing some of the guys that you grow up with. I mean, I played with Adam Jones. Like, I grew up watching Adam Jones. Like, it was so cool to play with him. And, it's pretty sweet. Watching guys that you grew up playing.
Is there anything differently you do mentally, like you said, to kind of not be so much of a fanboy or get too caught up in the moment when you're playing against these idols of yours, or do you just try to keep your routine just as similar as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool to recognize, like, okay, like, this is sweet, like, this is awesome, but they're just normal people, you know. They've been successful. Like that's why they're here, because they've been so successful. And you know, I still have a job to do in terms of going out there and getting guys out. And so yeah, it's cool to recognize, you know, who you're facing and who you're playing against. But I also think that, you know, there's a time where you just kind of have to lock it in and, you know, be in that attack mode.
Mm-hmm. We talked a bit earlier about kind of what your process is after a game, if maybe the outcome wasn't what you wanted, to kind of reset your mind. But what are some kind of tools or strategies that you have, you know, in the middle of a game? Like you give up a home run, there's no, you know, long break where you can kind of reset, right?
Yeah.
The next batter is coming up in a couple minutes. What are some things that you do in those couple minutes or 30 seconds to get your mind back on track?
What I'll do is, you know, after each batter, I'll go behind home plate. I'll look at second base and I'll just go, just kind of take a deep breath and just kind of, you know, not forget about it, but, you know, just kind of like, okay, like refocus. And that's what, you know, Brian Kane would talk about, just kind of, you know, recognizing what just happened and staying in the present moment. And I think that's huge, because if you don't think about what's going on, the game speeds up on you. And I think that is when guys get lost, and, you know, kind of bad things can happen. You know, there could be 3 more home runs after that. And so I think recognizing what's going on, taking, you know, a deep breath, and, you know, I get back on the mound and just attack still, you know, just go right after guys, because I feel like that first pitch after a home run is huge, you know, kind of sets the tone again.
Mm-hmm. Listen, man, before we wrap up here, one question I always like to kind of get people's perspective on is if you are talking to, say, a junior guy or a high school guy that was looking to make the leap to the competitive or pro level, whether it was baseball, hockey, soccer, whatever the sport is, what's kind of one advice in kind of the realm of the mental side of the game that you would give somebody that's maybe 16, 17, 18 years old that's looking to make that next step?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say maybe not mental side, but I would say play as many sports as possible. Mm-hmm. I think that's huge, just to be an athlete. But in terms of the mental side, I think, you know, I think talking to friends, having that friend group, I think that's huge, because if you have a close group of friends who are positive and want your best interest, you know, I think that's huge. And especially, I think talking to people, I mean, I think there's so many different, you know, ways that you can answer that. But I just think that, you know, being around certain people that, you know, kind of boost you up is, I think, really helps people at that age. Just because I think that age group needs that kind of social environment, where if they were just kind of on their own, they wouldn't know what they're doing, and they just kind of close themselves off. Mm-hmm. And they don't really, you know, want to be better. So I think talking to people about it is probably the best thing. And, you know, some people I know, you know, 16, 17-year-olds think they know everything. You know, I remember when I was 16, 17, I thought I knew everything. So mm-hmm. I think that's probably the biggest thing is, you know, talking to them, you know, about like, hey, like, you know, this is the reality, and, you know, helping them out. I think that's huge though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's an old, I mean, I'm terrible with sayings word for word, but there's an old saying of like, you're the average of like the closest 5 people in your group or something like that. Like, yeah. So like you said, it's really, I think I really like that, how kids, they have that kind of really close knit supporting cast around them. Cause if you have 5 really positive minded, like really goal oriented people around you, that's just going to rub off on you naturally. Whereas if you have 5 people that have the opposite mentality, that are always negative and kind of don't really have those aspirations or goals, or aren't supporting you for them, I mean, it's just going to kill your psyche and your mentality.
Yeah. I think it's just recognizing, you know, who your friend groups are, you know, if they're, you know, there for the right reasons, and I mean, I had a really good friend group growing up, and we're actually supposed to have a Zoom call later tonight. So, but it's cool. Like, I think if you have that, it goes a long way. And I think it really helps you grow up as a person and kind of open up and, recognize the good and the bad. So,
yeah. And I really like how you said too, playing multiple sports growing up. I think it's not only important physically, but mentally as well. Growing up, how many sports did you play other sports than baseball growing up?
Yeah, I played football, basketball. I played a little hockey. It wasn't really, like in a league or anything like that, but I loved playing hockey. Like, we'd play pond hockey all the time, and we'd go to the local skate arena, and we'd skate and stuff like that. But like, I thought that, I mean, I'd do like rollerblading, biking, like anything possible. I mean, I had a phase where I was like skateboarding for like a couple years. Yeah. Like, I think it's just cool to, kind of get that different mentality of each sport or, whatever you're doing. And, being, an athlete, having different movements, because each sport requires different movements. And I think, in baseball, you're in these like weird positions. And so I think that translate over to like other sports and like helping you be successful.
Yeah, it definitely is a weird position in baseball. I had a podcast a couple episodes ago, maybe 10 episodes ago, with Josh Bergman. He was a pick of the Cubs this past summer, and he was saying how like the throwing motion of a pitcher is really unnatural for a human. Yeah, it really puts you in an uncomfortable position. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, because obviously the natural is to throw underhand. And so that's what I never knew, that there was only 2 pitchers on a softball team, and they throw all these, like, they literally throw like every other game. So it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, I grew up, playing all those sports, and, miss football and definitely hockey. I don't think I can't remember the last, I think I played hockey like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Pond hockey. So
there's nothing better than pond hockey.
Oh, it's some of the best. The winters, it hasn't been that cold every time I go back home. So, but
yeah. And the one thing about kind of playing multiple sports too, that I think is so important, like you touch on a bit the mental side of it, but I mean, myself growing up, I played soccer and hockey were my primary sports. And then high school, I played football. And then after university, I played, I didn't play. I competed in powerlifting, did some boxing, and now I'm doing tennis, right? So really multidimensional. But one of the things that I really took away from playing so many sports is it teaches you how to lose in different ways. So like you would lose in football one way, which is completely different how you lose in hockey. And to that effect too, when you have a really elite athlete in one sport, like for example, a baseball pitcher, they might go like 15-0 or 16-0 in a season, right? And they never come up with that failure, or they never really learn how to lose in that sport. So they kind of almost have to play a sport they're not really that good at to kind of experience what losing is before reaching college or the pros, where like this is the first time where they kind of deal with some adversity and they kind of get lost in how to deal with it. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah. I think losing makes you a better person, so. Anyways, Alex, again, appreciate you kind of taking some time today, chat a bit. Yeah. Really enjoyed our conversation. And I think we had a really good, a lot of gems here for the kids growing up and trying to make that step. Because I think it's so important that a lot of kind of young athletes realize how important the mental side of the game is, because at this kind of maybe stage of their life, they might not fully grasp it, but I mean, it probably goes without saying how invaluable the mental side of the game has been to you over these years. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me on, Adam. Appreciate it.